All right, the matchups to watch for this week. The Eagles last week boy, Casey, everything we seem to look at in terms of some of the things they could do against this Redskins team. I don't know that the Eagles offense can do anything against any team the way they're starting to look. I mean, are you starting to see after 4 games that this team is going to have a lot of issues on the offensive side of the ball?
Well, I like their vertical passing. Bradford was 5 of 11 for 192 yards and 2 touchdowns in vertical passes, and we've been going into the game as maybe the worst vertical passer in the league. So they got that part of their game going, and they've got some good matchups coming up over vertical passing teams. But I kept watching this game, and I'm glad to see the big plays happen from the perspective of, hey, I thought Bradford was going to do well, and okay, he looks like he's doing well. But I kept looking at the game and the flow of the action going, where's Chip Kelly's team? I mean, I see this vertical passing team, but I see this team that's not trying to run the football. It's like this does not look like a Chip Kelly coach team the way they're going about this, and it's really head-scratching day.
Yeah, let's start with Bradford. He did have the 3 touchdowns. He went down the field. I thought the first half he still looked sloppy. He still looked a little bit, just not right. I mean, he looked scared a little bit at times, but I thought in the second half, that pass to Cooper, I felt like he gained some confidence with that throw, which led him to another couple of good throws. It seemed that he finally had a little bit of a confidence look about him, and that, I guess, happens when you connect on the vertical pass.
It happens when you connect on the vertical pass, and I'll bet, I don't know this for a fact, I've never surprised in the least, if at halftime they came up and told him, we're going to block for you. We're going to pass block. You step into these throws. We will give you good block. I don't care if we have to hold the guy. We're going to give you better block than what we've been giving. That's what if you look at Bradford's history, he's not a guy who usually feels jittery in the pocket. That's not his thing. I mean, he wasn't that way at Oklahoma. I mean, he suffered a lot of injuries, but he was always a guy who would stand in there. But I think he still doesn't trust the offensive line, and I bet at halftime they said to him, we're going to give you blocking, and when we give that to you, go deep and make this happen. So if they can continue to do that, especially coming up on this Sunday, if they can continue to do that, he'll continue to hit big plays for them.
Well, and we talked about it last week, Casey. They had Cooper down the field. They had Austin down the field. Those aren't the biggest speed burners in the world. The fact that they were getting behind defenders, you wonder why the Eagles were not taking more shots down the field.
Yeah, and the thing is that 5 of 11 number for 192, he missed a couple of plays. There was a couple plays at the end of the third quarter that he could have hit a couple more long passes. He could have had over 200 yards in the vertical game alone. So, you do wonder why they weren't taking more plays downfield. And the thing is, though, it's a great thing to see. And he didn't make any bad decisions in the game. When I graded the tape, and Bradford had been making one bad decision per game. We were talking last week about, is he going to, can he go through a game and hit big plays and not make a bad decision? So that was good. But I still kept wondering, you see that big run Murray at the end of the first quarter, or that 30-yard gain that he had, and you're like, oh, that's great, that's fantastic. Now, but okay, where's the running game? And he just didn't get back to it. If you're opening up, if you are hitting big passes, now they're playing a bit of, getting catch-up mode at times, but if you passes, you should be opening up lanes for your running game, especially the way that they ran the ball, early on. Is this a situation where Kelly's deciding he's going to be a pass-first team rather than a run? That would be big news.
Well, is his offensive line dictating that?
Yeah, partially, but if you can get a hat on a hat, if you can get the other team to say, and Washington's is one of the worst in the league, so they for them they have to keep guys back to stop. That they can let the Eagles receivers get behind them deep speaks for where the Washington secondary is talent wise. But if you've got those kind of problems, you've got to take people out of the box. And I hate to say it, but if you're in a situation where the Eagles and you say, okay, hat in a hat, and you still don't feel like you can run the football, maybe the situation's worse than we're thinking.
Yeah, well, we saw Peters go out last week. Losing him's big, and he looks like he is going to play this week, but he's probably not 100%. Lane Johnson was sprained MCL and a sprained ankle. He's going to try to go this week. Obviously, they're already down at right guard. Some of those years happened a couple of years ago, Andy's last year, Casey, where it just, they couldn't keep up with all the injuries they had across the line of scrimmage. And this team reminds me a lot of that Dream Team where everyone just started getting hurt. I mean, just one by one, guys were going down. And, it's hard to make up for the loss of talent when you're going to your third guard or you're moving your right guard, who's your backup right guard, over to left tackle. Sometimes you just don't have the depth to be able to handle some of the injuries that come your way.
No, you don't. And the thing is, in run blocking, you've got to beat the guy. You've got to, neutralize the guys in front of you. And run blocking can be a lot more difficult than pass blocking, because in pass blocking, a lot of times it's just a matter of keeping the extra guy in there. You can outnumber the other team, whereas, in the running game and things, they can bring the extra guy in the box, they can outnumber you. And in pass blocking, you can outnumber the other team. So maybe the Eagles are just saying, look, we can't beat these guys in a one-on-one situation. Let's give our offensive linemen the advantage in numbers and throw the football. But if they can do that, and Bradford can get comfortable, they can still hit some more big passes, because the Eagles have 4 more games on their team ranked 20th or worst in vertical yards per attempt, meaning defenses that are giving up big plays. So they've got some favorable matchups where they should be able to do in the vertical game what they did this past week, again, assuming they can keep some semblance of a healthy offensive line in front of Bradford.
We're looking at the matchups with Casey Joyner. We'll look at the NFC East games in just a minute. Eagles and the Saints. 97.3 ESPN's coverage on Sunday begins at noon. Casey, the Saints are 1-3 as well. So what are the reasons the Saints have been struggling at 1-3? If you watch them on Sunday night against the Cowboys, obviously, they look like a team with Breeze that was turning the corner a little bit. Are they a better 1-3 team than Philadelphia?
Their defense is abysmal. They've got a secondary. They're 29th in vertical yards per attempt allowed this year. I mean, they're giving up huge, big plays, and they've got problems all over the place. They've got Jarris Byrd back. He's a free safety they signed from Buffalo last year, and if he's healthy, he could help the situation. And if they get Keenan Lewis back, and he can help the situation too, but he's going to be banged up. I still think they have problems in their secondary. But if I'm looking at New Orleans, what they are is they had Breeze back, and Breeze looked better than Sunday, but he's still a dink-and-dunk quarterback right now. If I'm looking at the Saints, they've got, it's still Breeze, and he's still a dangerous quarterback, but I'm looking at that situation going, that's an offense that is not an explosive offense. If you want to get into a pace football game, you might be able to do pretty well against the Saints.
All right, let me ask you about their defense a little further. I saw a lot of young players out there. I think during the broadcast they mentioned they had 8 players that were rookies or second-year players playing on that defensive side of the ball. You look at Philadelphia's offense, they don't run the ball. Saints give up 123 yards on the ground. If you can't run the ball this week, do you fold up the tent and look for a new occupation?
You might want to. Yeah, the Saints, their defense is, they've not been that good against the and stopping the run this year. They're allowing I've got a number of different metrics and things. They're good, they're okay or worse in all of those metrics, and I think you can even do more against them. I think teams don't test the running game against them as much, sort of like what happened in the Washington game, where you looked at one of the reasons the Eagles might not have tested the running game so much, because the Washington run defense is not nearly as good as people are thinking that it is, because teams are throwing the ball against them. You don't have to run the football. This should be a week where the Eagles should, if they can get their offensive line going, and if they can, they'll stick with the running game and don't have to, they don't have a game situation where they got to play catch-up football. If they get that kind of situation going, they ought to be able to run the football with success and pass the football. This is a game where you look at it, and on paper, the Eagles should be able to score 24 or more points. I don't want to say easily, but it'd be a shock if they didn't.
Casey Joyner is with us here. Let me ask you then about the Eagles on defense against this team. You mentioned Breeze a little dink and dunk. Cousins dink and dunk them all day. It seems like that's the way to go in the NFL these days. It seems like everybody seems to be dink and dunking in everybody. Do you think that Philadelphia will struggle with the Saints personnel? They have a similar offense to Washington. 3 backs who all present different challenges. The wide receiving core is good, not great, but Breeze to me is a significant upgrade, even in the dink and dunk nature, than Cousins is.
Yeah, one thing though that Breeze will do, he's done it all through his career, and you can catch him if you're sharp defensively, is he'll force passes into coverage. He's always had higher numbers than the bad decision rate metric I have that measures that sort of thing. He's always done worse than that than you'd think, and sometimes he's been not terrible, but like, wow, he's bottom 10 in the league. You kind of wouldn't expect that. I think Breeze, he'll do that sort of thing, and if you give him the coverages, even with his arm the way it is, I think he doesn't. It's a psychological thing, but I think he doesn't want to accept that, okay, hey, I can't make the passes I can make before. I'm still going to go try and make these throws. So if I'm the Eagles, I'd say I'm going to take away some of those dink and dunk things and say, go ahead and try and beat us deep. Go ahead and try and throw those deep passes. We don't think your arm can do it. We think we're going to throw into windows that you shouldn't be throwing into. And I'll bet they could get a couple interceptions, a couple of game-changing interceptions that did that.
Where is one area that you like Philadelphia this week from the offensive perspective? I mean, is it Bradford taking shots down the field? I thought Bradford last week should have taken more shots down the field because he was successful. That secondary, you mentioned it last week, that was a very average to poor secondary. And when they finally connected, it was like, all right, let's keep going. After. When Culliver was on the field, it was like, you got a guy playing on one leg out here. Let's go. Let's get after this guy. So do you like Bradford matching up against that secondary, or is there some other area that you like more?
Yeah, no, I like Bradford against that secondary. I rate defensive players on a red, yellow, green basis, with green being, from an offensive perspective, kind of a go situation. These are guys you want to go target. So the more green targets you have in the secondary, the better. The Saints could have, depending on if Lewis plays and if he's up to full strength, they could have at least 3 green-rated targets in their secondary, and if Lewis is out, it could be 4. So I mean, you've got targets all over the place on that field. I'd be surprised to see them get Ertz more involved in the offense, because Vaccaro's been, their coverage against big tight ends has been terrible.
Well, we've been waiting for Ertz. I mean, in that game against the Redskins last year, 15 catches for 115 yards. He has 10 catches for under 200 yards on the season. It's unbelievable how little he has been involved in the offense.
Yeah, we went into that game last year. I remember having a conversation before that game last year where, will Chip Kelly go after this huge weakness that the Redskins defense has? I was like, no, but he usually doesn't do that because he doesn't target the tight end. But this is, again, one of those matchups you go, well, the matchup's there. You should be able to do this. You should be able to go after this defense with this matchup. So I'm not saying Ertz is going to catch 15 passes again, but come on, send as many targets as you can to the guy and make the Saints change things around so they go, instead of having that safety come in the box to stop the run, he's thinking about stopping the pass.
Hey, on defense, the Eagles have been good on defense, not great, but I think a lot of the reasons they're just a good defense and maybe not better is because they're on the field so much. But what do you think about the matchup this week? Where do you like it? The one thing, too, is they were second in the league in sacks last year. They only have 6 sacks, and I know sometimes sacks don't tell the whole story, but it seems like they are not getting pressure, including last week against the Redskins. So is this a matchup that you like Philadelphia's defense, or is it going to be another game where you're kind of waiting at the end here and watching to see if Breeze can engineer a drive?
It's a matter of if they take away that dink and dunk stuff, because last week the Eagles had 1 sack and only 2 quarterback hits. They either get a sack or a quarterback on 6.5% of dropbacks. The league average in that is 18.6% per game, so it's terrible. And their season-long number is 11%. They're one of the worst teams. It's not just getting a sack on the quarterback, actually hitting the quarterback. If I'm them, one way I get that to move, because you're never going to get a sack or a hit on a dink and dunk throw. Like if you're doing a little bubble screen, it's not going to happen. It's a dropback. You're never going to get some kind of pressure on. So try and stop those, those little dink and dunk passes. Take those away. Make them go a little more vertical than they want to. Hope it Breeze is going to make some of the mistakes that he makes and start getting a pass rush to where he can actually have a chance to get upfield. Because, like you said last week, the kinds of passes that Kirk Cousins is throwing, you're not going to get in there any more than 6.5% of the time.
Michael Kendricks being out, I know Hicks has played well, but it seems that the blitzing up the middle, that seems to be an area where they would send Kendricks up the middle, and maybe he didn't sack it, but he caused a lot of problems. I think that's one guy that, while Hicks is playing well, and he's been in on a lot of forced fumbles and even causing fumbles and recovering fumbles, and he has an interception, I believe, I think that's where they're missing Kendricks, that blitz up the middle a little bit. Yeah,
it's when you've got a replacement player, even if the player is making some plays, and a lot of times if you're going to make a blitz, you want to make sure that you got to make sure it's the right move, because if you make a blitz in the wrong situation against the wrong quarterback, if you try to blitz Drew Brees, if nothing else, he reads defenses really well. I mean, he'll take chances he shouldn't take, but he reads them exceptionally well. So, you want to make 100% of that. So I'll bet in the Eagles situation, they might be saying, look, we know you could do certain things here, but we don't want to take these chances with you because we're not sure yet. So, but they might reach a point of, again, 6.5% of plays you're getting a sack or a hit, might be time to start taking some of those chances.
Casey Joyner, ESPN.com's NFL Insider, is with us. We're breaking down the matchup between the Eagles and the Saints, and, of course, that game right here on 97.3 ESPN. You can hear pregame coverage starting at noon. on Sunday. Obviously the conversation around here, a lot has been about whether or not they can run the football with these guards, especially with the injuries up there, whether Sam Bradford's the right guy or not. But what a lot of it comes to, let me ask you, is the job that Chip Kelly has done through 4 games here. I mean, this is a well-coached football team.
Yeah. You and I were trading notes on Twitter at the end of that game where we were looking at Kelly and the clock management. As Washington's driving downfield and they're not taking timeouts, and I'm looking at this going, wait, is Andy Reid back? I mean, I thought he was in Kansas City. What's going on here? I mean, this is, you're now suddenly you start calling the timeouts. You get 20 seconds left, and now you can take timeouts. I mean, what sense does this make? I mean, you should know better that at that point they're not going to run the clock out. And, so his game management skills now look like, I'm not so sure about them. And you're looking at, it's like, our offensive line is banged up. You know what? A lot of teams have banged up offensive lines, and they have backups.
That's true.
And you could still get by. I mean, if you're getting down really deep, I get this whole 4-game run game isn't going very well. It's not just because of the backups. You got to coach the backups, too. So, I don't think this is a well-coached team right now.
Yeah, I think a lot of people around here believe that as well, and the question always becomes, in a situation much like Andy, Casey, is it Chip Kelly the GM or is it Chip Kelly the coach who is part of the reason why this team has not met expectations? Before we get back to that game, I want to go to some of the other NFC East games with you. New England and Dallas, Dallas obviously decimated by injuries. New England seems like, I know you're a WWE guy. I mean, they got the Brock Lesnar Go to Hell tour. I think New England's got the Go to Hell Roger Goodell tour going on right now, and this is a perfect stage for them to light up the scoreboard against this Dallas team, which is wretched in the secondary. Does this game have blowout written all over it?
They're going to send Dallas to Suplex City, man. It looks like that sort of game. Dallas's offense is all the pop gun offense now. It's just dicking and dunking. New England's defense, though, I'll say this, it's not nearly as good as the offense. In fact, it could be a weakness for them later this year. It could get them into some shootout games that would be could be a problem. But Dallas doesn't have the horses to make that shootout happen. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see this to be like a 48-21 game.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I think Dallas is probably foaming at the mouth here to do something, New England doing something special here. All right, Washington and Atlanta. I opened up the show with this question. Philadelphia basically goes down to Atlanta opening night. They miss a field goal on the road, Monday Night Football. They lose that game. Philadelphia's 1-3. They stink. Atlanta's 4-0. Everybody thinks they're pretty good. Am I supposed to think that Atlanta's that good or that Philadelphia is that bad? Or will we find out a little bit more about Atlanta because they're going to play Washington? I'm having a hard time figuring out who Atlanta is because of some of the matchups that they've had.
I'll put it this way. Atlanta, when you look at them on tape, they are a much better team than they were in Week 1, and Philadelphia right now isn't. So if those teams played again, I have a feeling that Atlanta would win that game fairly handily, at least if Philadelphia plays the way they've been playing of late. Atlanta's run blocking might be the best in the league right now. If it's not the best, it's in the top 2 or 3. I mean, they're running that well. Freeman's so good coming into the season. Devontae Freeman and Tevin Coleman were, okay, this is a platoon. We're going to split the carries. Atlanta's made it clear, no, Freeman's our guy. He's our number one guy. He's having a fantastic year. You know what Julio Jones is doing. I mean, this is a team they're starting to become dynamic, and they're able to impose their will on other teams. And I wouldn't be surprised to see if they took that Washington defense and if they put up 35 points against it.
Yeah, the matchup with Julio Jones and Matt Ryan against that secondary Atlanta, I like in that game as well. Giants, a lot of people are starting to turn that the Giants have the least amount of problems in the NFC East. They're playing this awful San Francisco team, but you got to be consistent in this league. But it seems like this is a good spot for New York too.
Yeah, I might be writing something about the Giants here in the near future. I can't give it all away, but I'll give a hint. Pass blocking's good. Run defense is awesome. Special teams are good. Odell Beckham Jr. could do even better than what he's doing because they're not utilizing him in the downfield game. You start looking at a lot of elements for New York, and it becomes clear that these guys are pretty good. And right now they're trending upwards in a big time way. And San Francisco's had some big problems. So the Giants have a lot of reasons to think their future's pretty bright.
Yeah, I like the Giants at the beginning of the year more so than most, and the one thing that I got to find out from them is if they can rush the passer in a big spot. And one of the things, Casey, is Philadelphia 1-3. We talked about it. Are they a 1-3 bad? Yeah, they look 1-3 bad. I mean, and Chip Kelly said, "Well, we're a couple kicks away from being 3-1, and everyone's happy." My point really was Philadelphia looked pretty good last year, 9-3 up to Thanksgiving. It's hard to make a judgment on any of these teams until we get to about Thanksgiving.
Yeah, it is, but you could say, yeah, we just missed a couple kicks. I mean, we could be 3-1. Yeah, it's possible. And if you were 3-1, people would still look at the team and go, "You're 3-1, and you're lucky you're not 1-3." So,
right.
Jimmy Johnson used to tell his team, "You've got to be good enough to overcome one bad official call. You've got to be good enough to overcome that." Well, Philadelphia, you could be good enough to overcome a missed field goal. You've got to be good enough to do that. And they're
Good
not.
point. Let me get your take on these games. In New York, San Francisco, you like the Giants?
Like the Giants very much.
Washington on the road in Atlanta?
Atlanta, I think, wins big.
And I know you like New England to bring Dallas Suplex City. How about Philadelphia against the Saints?
The Saints, I think that defense is going to – I think Philadelphia's going to be able to take advantage of that defense. I think that Breeze is a dink-and-dunk guy. Let's put it this way. I think Philadelphia is going to be able to turn this into more of a pace game than they have in any game all year long. They're going to be able to get the lead on offense, and then they're going to be able to say, we can commit to the run, and if you try and stop us, we're going to go deep again. You better keep those safeties back. And I think that that's going to be the type of game that they can have. It'll be the first time we start seeing the Chip Kelly offense really operate all season long. So I think if that happens, that's a recipe for them to win, especially at home. So I've got Philadelphia probably win this game 35-20.
All right, that would be a much-needed break from some of these nail-biters down to the wire. Casey Joyner every Thursday with the breakdowns on these games. Check him out over at ESPN.com, on Twitter at Casey Joyner TFS, and every Thursday here with the matchups to watch, the Eagles and the Saints. All right, pal, we'll talk to you later.
Sounds good. I appreciate it.